By the end of 2017, I had reached my breaking point. I struggled with suicidal ideation pretty much my entire life, but I always had a reason to stay. I won't use, the gun that my brother gave me because I don't want him to feel guilty. I can't leave my wife alone. I can't leave my son without a father. But in 2017, I started justifying it. My brother is strong. He'll be okay. My wife and my son, they have a strong, amazing support system. They'll be fine. The world will keep turning without me. And I knew then that I was in real danger because I had stopped fighting for myself. I'd stopped, looking for reasons to stay. And I started convincing myself that I had permission to go. And that's what scared me enough to ask for help. So I reached out to my mother and she directed me to a therapist. And so I go to the therapist's house and we sit down and we start talking. And in that session, what he did is he laid out my entire life in front of me. He really gave me the clarity that I never had before, but that I needed. And for the first time, I saw the truth about all of my lifelong struggles. Struggles with relationships, self-destructive behavior, struggles with drugs, everything. I wasn't choosing pain, I was just conditioned to expecting it. I wasn't necessarily weak, I was just operating on beliefs that were formed in trauma. And, the best thing is I wasn't doomed to stay that way forever, but I did have to actively rewrite the story and rewrite the script of my entire life leading up to this point. So ultimately, after doing some self-digging and some self-discovery, I figured out that I was still dealing, despite my life looking amazing, I was still dealing with this massive depression and these continuing self-destructive behaviors because I still had a lot of anger and resentment and unforgiveness for certain events that had happened in my past. I still hadn't forgiven people in my past that had hurt me. So I went through this process of forgiveness. Now, I've said this story several times, so I'm not going to repeat it here, but if you're interested, I'll link the video below where I talk about it. It's a video on forgiveness and, it'll help you forgive and move forward, but I'll link it below. So I did the work, forgave and let go. And I've said before, and I'm going to say it again because it's the coolest thing ever. So when I go through this process and I forgave and, began to move forward in forgiveness, one of the most amazing things happened to me that's ever happened in my entire life. It was an absolute spiritual moment and something I'll never forget. Sitting on my bed in my bedroom, the moment I forgave, the lights in the room got brighter. Literally, the lights in the room got brighter and my shoulders literally got lighter. It was an incredible supernatural moment in my life. That's why I am so big on forgiveness. That's why that's one of the first things I tell people that they need to do to move forward, to become the best version of themselves, is they have got to learn how to forgive because you release so much negative energy by doing that. But that was proof for me that forgiveness works. Once that happened, I healed a certain aspect, but I wasn't done yet. A little while earlier than this, I heard a podcast and a lady was talking about how we could go back to tragic or traumatic memories in our lives and rewrite them. This has several names. Some people call it inner child work. Some people call it trauma reprocessing. Some people call it forgiveness therapy or timeline therapy. But the basis of it is you imagine the event that was traumatic in your life and you go back and you recreate it in a way that is safe or that is comforting or in a way that isn't harmful to you. So then I just asked, I spoke out loud, please show me an event that is still holding me back from completely healing. And in doing this, a memory came back from my childhood. And in the memory, my mom and my dad were in this violent fight, more violent than usual. And I walked into the room when it was about to get super crazy. I won't go into detail, but we'll just say it was super wild and something that a child should never have to experience. Well, terrified, after walking in on this, I ran out of the house. But the memory of that fight had been following me subconsciously for 3 decades. So in that moment as a child, that event did a few things to my brain. Number one, my nervous system got stuck in survival mode. It created a constant state of tension. I remember every loud noise, every sudden noise, every raised voice, it felt like a threat, even if everything was safe. So in my child mind, safety no longer existed. The second thing that it did is it created a sense of powerlessness. A child's brain is designed to see their parents as protectors. But when your protectors become a threat, your entire worldview shatters. And that is where that program in my mind that said love is dangerous, that's where it started. Because the two people that were supposed to love each other were at war with each other. The third thing that happened is guilt and over-responsibility formed. And so what I mean by that is it created a pattern where I felt like I always needed to fix things, always needed to mediate things, always needed to keep people from hurting each other. And this is interesting when I found this out, because fast forward 10 years and I attempted to be the mediator between another fight between my mom and my stepdad. But that failed because they're both stubborn as shit. The fourth belief that I came up with as a child when I walked in on that fight was trust as a foreign concept. My parents, who were supposed to be my model for love, became my biggest source of fear. And at that moment, my brain learned that closeness equals danger, which, if you've watched any of the videos in this series prior to this, it shows that closeness in my mind always equaled danger, which is why I pushed everybody away or sabotaged every relationship. It started in this moment when my little mind took a snapshot of this fight. So before I fully go into how I actually healed from this, let me tell you how this event affected me into adulthood, and how the events that you experience as a child actually you carry with you into adulthood, and it creates your mistrust, it creates your personality and how you respond in different situations. So the way that it affected me in adulthood is number one, relationships. As I've discussed, I had a subconscious expectation of chaos. If love equals war in childhood, I subconsciously expected relationships to be toxic, to be chaotic, to be manipulative. And if it wasn't already by the other party in the relationship, I created it. Now, ain't that jacked up? Number two, I either avoided conflict or I became hyper-reactive. Me, I avoided a lot. I became a people pleaser. I became very manipulative. I suppressed emotions a lot. But then I introduced drugs into my equation, and then I had a hair-triggered temper, and I became a liar, even more of a manipulator. It was terrible. The third way that followed me into adulthood is that my nervous system stayed on high alert at all times. Loud noises, slamming doors, sudden movements used to freaking jolt me. I'd have a full-on stress response, even if there was no danger going on. I struggled to relax or even feel calm in calm situations. The fourth thing is that I've mentioned is I struggled with addiction really bad. Because when your mind is overwhelmed and it has all this unprocessed trauma, you look for a relief valve. It seeks escape, and drugs was that escape. So anyway, back to the story. I hear this woman talking about recreating the memory in your mind. And so that's what I did. So I go and I sit down and I calm myself down. And I'm in a meditative state. And in my mind, I am imagining this event taking place. So in my mind, as the adult, I close my eyes and I'm imagining, I'm putting myself in the scene of that traumatic event from childhood. So now, in my imagination, I'm 30-something-year-old me standing in the kitchen, my mom chasing my dad with a knife, my child self walking in, seeing it, being scared, and my adult self taking my child self and walking him to the other room and just holding him and telling him, you're safe. Nothing is wrong. Everything's fine. You're safe. Don't worry. So I just hold my 5-year-old self and just reassure him and make him feel comfortable and make him feel safe. This is called trauma reprocessing. Trauma reprocessing is a subconscious shift, and it allows your brain to rewrite its relationship with the past. So here's how it works. Trauma gets stored in the body as an active threat. When something traumatic happens, especially in childhood, your brain doesn't just record the event like a neutral, like a memory. It actually freezes it in place as an unresolved survival response. And this happens because the child doesn't have the cognitive ability to process the trauma rationally. And so the amygdala, I'm getting real sciencey here. So the amygdala, that's your brain's fear center. It keeps that memory alive to protect you from future danger. So your nervous system then stays in this state of just hypervigilance in case something like that happens again. And that's why even decades later, that memory still feels intense, as though you're reliving it again, as though you're in that space again. So now, check this out. This is super cool. Why does reimagining the event heal it? There's a scientific explanation. When I went back into my memory as my adult self, I gave my 5-year-old self what it never had: safety, reassurance, protection. In doing this, my brain reclassified the event from an active, unresolved threat to a completed, resolved memory. My subconscious no longer saw the memory as something that it needed to protect me from, because now the part of me that was stuck in fear had been saved. Essentially, I closed the loop that had been keeping that trauma alive. That's freaking incredible. So your brain doesn't differentiate between what is actually happening and what you vividly imagine. And that's why athletes, they go over and over in their mind, they imagine hitting the game-winning shot or performing their best. That's why PTSD flashbacks are just as real as when they happened. By reprocessing the trauma through visualization, your brain updates the event. So now I wasn't the lonely, scared child. Now I was protected by another human, which was me. In my imagination, I was protected and made to feel safe, and it rewired my brain. And after I did that, I never felt depression again. And in the past, I was good for about every 2 years, I would get massively depressed. I'll make another video about that at some point, of why depression and things like that come around on cycles, because I've researched that too. For me personally, every 2 years, I would get massively depressed. There's a cycle, and there's a psychological reason for that. And we'll talk about that at some other point. But real quick about depression. Depression is rooted in our unresolved traumas. Depression is not just sadness. It's suppressed emotion, it's trapped pain, and it's your nervous system just stuck in a freeze state. So when your brain perceives an unresolved, inescapable threat, it just shuts down. And by going back and rescuing my younger self, I had removed the unresolved threat. And my nervous system finally let go of the depressive state that it had been trapped in for the entirety of my life. So before reprocessing, that trauma was just like an open wound, unresolved, unhealed, and triggering subconscious stress. But once I rewrote that event and gave my younger self safety, that wound closed. My brain no longer saw the event as a present danger. My nervous system no longer needed to be in a shutdown state. My identity shifted from wounded child to self-healer. And with the root cause healed, the symptoms like depression, fear, addiction, emptiness, all that just naturally disappeared. Isn't that freaking incredible how the brain works? It's so fascinating to me. So that's the story of how I went from wounded child to self-destructive adolescent and adult to being set free. That's the story of everything from childhood up to where I'm at now. And where I'm at now, I don't have bad days. I don't stress out. I am grateful every day. I am at peace 99% of the time. I'm joyful. I am still human though. I do have some kids, And them kids do press my buttons sometimes. But perfection isn't real. Nobody can be perfect. I now live a wonderful, beautiful, successful life. I have a beautiful wife. I have beautiful kids. I'm so grateful every day that I wake up. I get to be her husband and their dad. And it's the most amazing thing to me. I'm the complete opposite of who I used to be. But none of this would have happened if I didn't hit rock bottom, if I didn't decide to reach out and really try to understand why I am the way that I am. Secondly, it wouldn't have happened without my wife being as strong and stubborn as she is, but I had to do the work to solve this stuff, to figure out, why am I so self-destructive? Why do I want this beautiful life, but I keep doing the things that I don't want to do? It was a constant battle until I went to war with myself and came out the other end brand new. You have the same opportunity. If you feel like you're at your worst, even when your life is at its best, if you've achieved things, but you still feel empty inside, if you stopped running, but now you find yourself that your mind is louder than ever, you're not broken. You're waking up. You're finally facing yourself. You're finally at the edge of a breakthrough. You're finally at the moment that's going to decide your future. But sometimes this is where people stop. They hear all of this, but they think, yeah, but that's not me. I had a rough childhood, but I don't dwell on it. I turned out fine. But my question always is, did you? Because I see people that say that every single day. But I'm reminded that trauma doesn't always show up as depression. It doesn't always look like addiction or rock bottom moments. Sometimes it looks like never being able to sit still with yourself. Always needing distractions, music, TV, work, social media, because silence feels uncomfortable. Sometimes it looks like struggling to open up, even to the people that you love the most, even to people that love you the most. Sometimes it looks like being quick to anger or sarcasm or control without even really knowing why. Other times it shows up as feeling numb. You're not sad, you're not happy, you're just kind of going through the motions. But those same people are always the ones that tell me, oh, I'm fine. Or like me, you sabotage every relationship that you've been in. Something bad happens in every single relationship that you've been in. You can't say, oh, I'm fine. It's always them. Like, it's not. You're the common denominator. There's unresolved things that you haven't faced yet. It's the same people who say, I'm fine. But you drive to work and you get so angry every morning at 8 o'clock because that's the pattern that you're living in. You know you're going to be in traffic at 8, so every day at 8, you get tense. That's not okay. That's not being fine. That's unresolved trauma that you have not dealt with yet. Most people don't realize it, but your past doesn't just disappear because you stop thinking about it, because you're not thinking about it. If you've never faced it, it's still there, controlling your reactions, shaping your decisions, and keeping you stuck in patterns that you don't even recognize. So, before I go any further, we need to talk about the biggest lie that people tell themselves. And that is, I'm fine. In the next episode, we're going to expose that lie. I'm going to break down how unresolved trauma shows up in ways people don't even realize. And how even if you don't think you're affected, your actions are probably telling a different story. Because healing isn't just for people who are struggling. It's for everyone who's ever said, I'm fine, but deep down they know something isn't right. I'll see you in the next episode. If any of this resonated with you, if it opened your eyes a little bit and you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. More importantly, share this with somebody that you think is going through it. Or if you haven't, you can hit the bell notification. That way you'll know when I drop another one of these videos. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for sticking around. As always, make good choices. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one.